presentation being made by our city manager, I believe, in this one, and Mr. Torres, in terms of how do we bridge the opportunity and immediate need for digital divide.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will lead through a quick presentation here with the PowerPoint slides, and then we do have all of the technical staff on the call as well to answer follow-up questions. Kevin, if we could go to the first slide. Thank you. As part of the City of Lakeland's commitment to reducing the digital divide, the City Commission funds a project each year for the installation and support of Surf Lakeland public Wi-Fi to qualified 501c3 nonprofit organizations. The grant has been $20,000 annually since the City Commission authorized a successful pilot at the Dream Center in 2017. Next slide, please. The grant administration is managed through a committee, and that committee is supported by the Community and Economic Development Department along with the Information Technology Department. Next slide. The grant process requires nonprofit organizations to apply for the installation of Surf Lakeland public Wi-Fi access, and the committee makes an award decision. In order to make those decisions, the committee members consider the cost, but also the complexity of delivering Surf Lakeland services to a particular nonprofit facility. The $20,000 grant is a hard cap, which is the most a single recipient can receive. The applicants are allowed and even encouraged to supplement the grant for any additional cost or needs. Next slide. Previous Surf Lakeland grant installations have been at the Dream Center, as mentioned, also at Parker Street Ministries. The FY20 Surf Lakeland grant awardees were and are the Boys and Girls Club and also New Life Center Ministry. And for the FY21 Surf Lakeland grant, we have approximately $10,000 that are available that has not yet been awarded for fiscal year 21. Next slide. As you are all aware, we had a request come in from Dr. H.B. Holmes for a pilot program. And so as the city understands it, the request is for the city of Lakeland to provide fiber connectivity and internet services to Harmony Baptist Church, where REMA Broadcasting Networks will serve as an interconnect, utilizing a tower and sector antennas to then broadcast Wi-Fi connectivity into the immediate area surrounding the church. Next slide. The cost for this pilot location is estimated to be $12,000. And of course, that is only a budgetary estimate. If we proceed with this, a site survey would be required so that we could provide a true cost estimate. Next slide. The City of Lakeland currently provides the complete suite of installation, equipment, management, and administration of Wi-Fi services that support all Surf Lakeland locations. Munn Park would be an example of where Surf Lakeland is being broadcast for use in an outdoor setting. The pilot request in this case is a hybrid approach, which is different from the current configuration of Surf Lakeland installations that exist. Next slide. Along with the request, there are some considerations that we believe the City Commission would need to account for. First would be content, access, and life cycle management in this type of hybrid configuration, which again is different than our current platform. It would reside with the provider. So that would all rest with REMA Broadcasting. Access to the Wi-Fi connection is not controlled by the City of Lakeland in this hybrid type of configuration. Therefore, we think a binding agreement would be necessary to cover all user access, service levels, and restriction against monetary gains for this service. So a question would be, should the grant process that I discussed be amended or new processes developed for this hybrid type configuration that would help support our efforts toward the digital divide? Next slide. One of the options that was looked at was whether or not we might could take the grant program and pay for an ISP provider. So, example of that would be Spectrum for internet services for this type of configuration, and that we thought that might be more cost effective considering the installation, management, and administration of this hybrid configuration. However, we did talk with Spectrum about that possibility. Spectrum indicated that they have had a similar situation once previously, and that there were some issues that became problematic, and that Spectrum would not be interested in entering into that type of arrangement. So that's the research that was done on that, and we do not believe that is an option following the comments we received back from Spectrum. Also at this time, the detailed specifications and capabilities of the equipment that would be provided by HB Homes or REMA Broadcasting has not been yet received. And so therefore the proposed services and capabilities have not been fully assessed by staff. Another thing to consider, of course, is that, we're in negotiations with Summit for broadband provisions within the city. We had our first meeting with Summit recently. And so, we're not fully aware yet of all of the options that Summit may bring to the table to provide for the digital divide efforts that we have. Next slide. So in conclusion, there are several factors to consider that I've talked about and various options that could be utilized should the commission decide to do so. I think the question is there interest from the City Commission to have staff modify the Surf Lakeland grant program, which could then potentially assist in funding this request from Mr. Holmes? Or is there some other method preferred by the City Commission if there's a method or an option here at all? So that really completes the presentation. It's kind of a highlight of how we run the program and what the concerns or considerations should be moving forward. And then staff is just seeking direction from the City Commission if this is an option you wish to choose. And again, we do have technical staff on this call to be able to answer any questions. That completes the presentation portion.
Thank you. I'm going to defer to Commissioner Franklin only because you are going to have to leave first for any thoughts or input you'd like to share on this.
Well, I mean, I guess my first thought on it is I feel like we've gone through a selection process to choose a vendor that we want to go forward with broadband, and we've not yet heard what their proposals may be on digital divide. So my hesitation would be we might be getting out ahead of putting the cart before the horse a little bit.
Commissioner Madden.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner Franklin. I can speak a little bit. We did have an initial meeting with Summit, and I'll be giving a report about that on Monday. But we did ask them specifically about digital divide, and just kind of got into the nuts and bolts of. I mean, I appreciate them as business owners needing to go to where they're going to get immediate, adoption and penetration to be able to get ROI for what they're doing. And they have an aptitude to want to help, with digital divide, similar to Spectrum and other carriers, kind of potentially offering a lower rate, for some neighborhoods. I did bring up specifically that we had some requests to extend our fiber to a location like we've done with schools and things. And then, but we don't provide the services. Would that be something that they would be interested in potentially, extending fiber to a facility or a premise? They're not, it sounds like now currently going to be doing any kind of Wi-Fi like this scenario. Their solution is a wired, fiber to premises solution. And so it doesn't look like there's, going to be anything in the near future, meaning this next year. And so I think it kind of confirmed what I felt like was true when I asked my colleagues, are we considering digital divide similarly to how we consider affordable housing? Meaning we're not looking to one particular person to do all of this for us, but it might come in a myriad ways, and we're flexible and nimble and want to get solutions, for digital divide, as they come case by case, whether it's through a CRA, whether it's through this Surf Lakeland grant, whether it's through, a church lighting up a neighborhood. And so, certainly it's up to my colleagues. I'm just trying to give some perspective. It did sound like Summit has an inclination to want to, do some digital divide services in the future when they are established and when they have a network built. If we can provide them census data with regard to where our least served neighborhoods are, they will not avoid those neighborhoods, to get ROI, but they will begin to fit that into their plan. So they said that, they do want to provide services, to everyone. And they certainly, do the math equation with regard to, large businesses, kind of subsidizing, some of the lower end areas. So it didn't sound like they are going to avoid low income areas because they don't think they're going to get, the ROI, but more that's fitting into their big picture plan. And as they build in areas where they're getting, the full pay, then they'll be able to offer lower costs for services in the neighborhoods, neighboring areas, and they can strategically target those areas a little more effectively once they start building out and they can get some census data from us saying, okay, this area has no service. And so I do want to also say that, with a hybrid approach like Surf Lakeland and Wi-Fi, and even, this coming 5G conversation with the pole attachments, we only have, a very minuscule percentage of any kind of fiber to premises service. Fios would be the only one doing that currently, and it's just a very slim, territory within our city limits or Lakeland Electric territory. So the Summit is the real deal. I mean, they're coming to do fiber to the premises. And, before they can offer that extreme amount of option to, the lower income areas, certainly they also have to start adding it to people who, like most of us, none of us have probably fiber to the premises currently. So I think that they have the potential to help us. But I feel like if it's the desire of my colleagues, things like this Dr. Holmes, things like what we've done with the schools will be things that we can do, and that will not impede Summit's progress at all. And if as they build, we get creative and can say, hey, it works so great, at this church, would you consider, extending the fiber this time instead of us, to this facility so that, or, it sounds like there's options, but they're not ready to specify anything concrete until they get building out, which will be a while in a process.
The only thing that I'd add to that are they'd be competing with free because REMA is doing this on a no charge basis to the home and to make it available for about 250 homes. And so it's not low hanging fruit for them in that, as Commissioner Mendes talked about. Commissioner Walker and then Mr. Torres.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions, one comment. No, they're both questions, excuse me. What would preclude us from doing something at Surf Lakeland? We've done Park Street Ministries, we've done with Dream Center, we have it at all our city facilities. What would preclude us from doing something like that in this particular community that maybe, if I hear it correct and what I'm understanding correct from Dr. Holmes and Pastor Lake with IMA, saying this is probably the best location to provide some services to a most needed kind of community as such. What would, again, preclude us from doing something like Surf Lakeland for that area? Secondly, I heard you say, Mr. Rouse, that we have not gotten information back from REMA Broadcasting, I guess, as to what would it entail for us to move forward with the hybrid approach as I refer to as being, so we can get the particulars to do what it would take. What's the hold up on that? I'm not clear with that. So those are my two questions.
Okay, Commissioner, on the second part there, we do have some basic information. We just don't have as much of the detail as once we do have it. For instance, how far out into the community the broadcast would actually reach, and therefore, how many potential homes could be, served with that. And so, that's just some of the detailed information, but we do have a general enough sense of the information to have an idea about, the possibility of moving forward. Let me yield to Oscar Torres, our IT director, but I think Oscar probably has more comments on that.
Good morning, Commission and City staff. Oscar Torres, Director of IT. I did want to put out some information before you guys started collaborating even more on what I would consider a critical requirement. Is that right now our services are provided by FiberLight, and so based on the conversations with Spectrum, there's an assumption that they might have the same reservations. So this would be an assumption that FiberLight would allow that type of configuration, because we would essentially be acting like an ISP in this type of configuration. So we would have to go back and make sure that we would take a look at our contract and agreement with FiberLight to make sure that we're in compliance with the services that they provide us, so that we could provide services to Surf Lakeland Wi-Fi. And I think right now there hasn't been any issues with that, because we have controlled it. We've controlled the entire suite from the installation to the management to the access. So I just wanted to make sure that's an important piece, which I would obviously consider a tremendous, critical requirement before you could even proceed forward, or a consideration as well.
So to that end, what you're saying is that REMA and FiberLight would have to be in sync with each other in terms of understanding what the demands and expectations would be before they'd even be willing to consider that? Well,
what we would probably do, Mayor, is that if we wanted to proceed forward, it would be contingent upon if we could agree with FiberLight that this configuration would be acceptable. The assumption is that maybe they would have the same reservations as maybe a Spectrum would. We just don't know. So we would have to make sure that we're, compliant with the agreement and the contract that we have with FiberLight.
I'm trying to understand that, Mr. Mayor. I don't mean to cut across, but I'm trying to make sure I understand and capture what Mr. Torres is saying. And that is, if we attempt to do either a hybrid approach or just having, again, a Surf Lakeland in that particular community, we have to go to FiberLight to make sure, I guess, the arrangements or whatever is done properly for us to be able to do that. Did we not do that? Maybe at the Dream Center in that area? I'm just trying to make sure I understand that.
Hey, Commissioner Walker, this is specific to the hybrid configuration, because it is different than what we're doing right now. So that's where we would want to go back and make sure that we're compliant with. And again, we haven't looked at that contract. We haven't looked at that agreement to see if we were to, because essentially we would be serving as what would be called an ISP, typically what a FiberLight and a Spectrum would be serving as. So because of that, it does change the dynamics of that relationship. So in a sense, we would be providing internet services through FiberLight to Mr. Holmes in this configuration. That is kind of one of the key differences between where Surf Lakeland is at right now versus this type of configuration.
So only just for the hybrid approach, but if we did Surf Lakeland for that particular community to get services for X hundred homes, X hundreds of homes or households, we could do that on our own.
Yes, sir, we probably could, but again, the only things that I think would come up there, which are similar to what the Spectrum concerns were, is I think what you'll see is some ISPs may consider that as competition, because right now we're not broadcasting into any of the housing developments or neighborhoods or anything like that. So I don't know how that would play out. Again, from a technology perspective, yeah, that is a capability that could be there. We would have to obviously do some site analysis and probably partner with a third party to come in and help us do the site surveys and things like that. But from a capabilities perspective, it is there. It just It just depends on which direction we want to go, because again, with Surf Lakeland, we control it from the beginning to the end. In a hybrid configuration, we're basically just the interconnect. We would essentially be no different than a Spectrum or a FiberLight. We would kind of be the middle person when it comes to that.
I got that, Mr. Torres, and I guess I'm trying to land my thought or my concern, or to make sure I'm clear in my head. If we chose to do something very similar to what we've done with Surf Lakeland at the Dream Center, Parker Street Ministries, and now we do it at Harmony Baptist Church, through our means of doing what we can do, we could do that. Am I hearing that correct?
From a technology perspective, yes, sir, we could do that.
And people and those homes or households in that particular area will have connectivity. I mean,
only very close to the church. That's the difference. So the big difference in this is what REMA's proposing is a spray for an area. We would have a very centered, pointed place like Parker Street and Dream Center are. So that's the difference. And we would have the maintenance costs of continuing that and providing that. Whereas REMA, we go to the REMA if we serve as the ISP and we're done. And they take care of everything else that they're doing. And they're making that available to those houses at no charge.
Got it. Okay, got it.
Right, because I believe you're proposing a 2-mile radius.
Right, but then again, the concern you had in the hybrid situation, if I hear you correct, is with the provider that we are with, to make sure we can get that taken care of.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Madden and McLeod.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Oscar, why would HB Homes not be the ISP since they're providing the service?
So the way I understand it is that the request is fiber connectivity and also lighting up the fiber. So what that essentially means is that we would supply a network switch there with internet access to it. So we essentially would be the ISP. From that standpoint, he would connect to it and then provide the Wi-Fi services. So it's kind of it's definitely a different configuration, but we would technically be serving as the ISP because we are lighting the fiber and we're providing that service to him. That's the way.
We don't typically light it now, and we don't typically light anything now. We just offer it dark, and then FiberLight lights it.
So, are you talking in reference to Surf Lakeland, Commissioner Mann?
Some other commercial entity.
Just the other grants that we do.
So in reference to Surf Lakeland grants, yes, ma'am, we light it. We light it through FiberLight. We do all that from the beginning to the end. Installation, access, management, we do all that. Now with dark fiber,
through FiberLight.
Right. Did I answer your question, Commissioner Mann?
Yes, I guess I figured that since the Dr. Holmes, delivers content, I think he's a broadcaster. I don't know exactly what he does, but I thought that he would have the capacity to light up and be the actual ISP. So that's why I was a little bit confused.
Well, it's getting it to you that we have to do. So we have to have a handshake, and FiberLight doesn't want to be his handshake. It's the city of Lakeland that would be the handshake in this case. Well, Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you, Oscar. Good context and just information to know. I had the same question as Commissioner Walker because I was confused on, and I'm clear now, Surf Lakeland does not broadcast out around a 2-mile radius. So that was one of my questions. Can Surf Lakeland, as it operates now, is that an option for this area, but it would be different? Sean, in your presentation, you mentioned that potentially a cost-effective option would be to pay an internet service provider instead of us running it. So then I wondered, well, would Summit be interested in that arrangement? And then that kind of led me to what Commissioner Franklin was saying. I think I would really like to know what the Summit plan looks like. And I know Commissioner Madden's, we've got kind of a preview of that, and we think we know. But I think I would be hesitant to go forward with this until we really have a handle on what does the Summit partnership look like, what is their digital divide strategy, if there is one, and then are there gaps that we feel like we need to fill in, and does the Surf Lakeland grant process allow us to do that, or do we need to modify it? So that's, for me right now, and I know we're missing 3 of our colleagues, so we certainly want to hear what they think as well, but I would be inclined to kind of put this in a holding bin until we hear more from Summit and what their specific plans look like.
Commissioner McLeod, if I could ask a question. If you knew that that's an area that they say you can peel that off and we're fine with that, would that be something that would alleviate your concern? In other words, if they go, if that's the area you're doing and that you guys want to try that and you want to try and get that digital divide taken off the shelf, we have so many other things to focus on over here, we'll do that, and they're fine with that. Is
Sure.
that okay?
Yeah, I think so, Mayor. I think that if they said that, there's still, from what I'm hearing, some logistical issues that we would have to work through, and I wasn't aware of the fiber light component. I had asked City Manager Shiraus about do we have other applicants in the past who were not awarded a Surf Lakeland grant? So I wanted to make sure we didn't kind of end around that process if we've denied it in other areas, that we would award it here, just to make sure that that process is tight. But I would be very open to continuing to pursue this if I knew that it would fit in what Summit's doing. I think, kind of going back to what Commissioner Franklin said, we went through this whole process of finding a broadband partner. Digital Divide was supposed to be part of that effort. So I'd hate to start marching off and doing our own thing that doesn't sync with what they're planning to bring to the table.
Commissioner, City Manager Shiraus.
One of the things in talking with Summit, Commissioner McLeod, that makes it a little difficult for them to determine at this time is, what's been asked for here is a pilot project. Now, a pilot project at one location is certainly one thing, but how far beyond the pilot might it go? Where will the other locations potentially be? How many houses and rooftops would be served from those locations? And then how much of that is really kind of market penetrating into areas that Summit, would initially provide. So, we're only looking at this right now from the pilot one location aspect, but certainly we've all been told that this would be a pilot with then the with the request to then expand upon that, which is a concern for Summit.
And let me add to that, recognize this is missional for REMA. So they're coming to bear, they have a for-profit division and they have a not-for-profit division. The whole purpose of this portion of what they're doing is to take a community and eliminate digital divide. And let's presume we could do perhaps another tower and another tower that they might broaden the area. And again, alongside Summit as good partners, we would say, look, you're working on getting deployed. We're working on trying to eliminate digital divide in the shortest time possible so that we can help students learn. And this has been on our mission for a long time. You're going to provide this to these houses, to this group of houses for free and never have a model to charge for this service. That's tough to want to compete with, and why would we be willing to do it? Why would we advocate this? Because it allows us to do in the short term what we've talked about for 8 or 9 years, while we're bringing our partner up to speed on the things that are the most profitable thing for them to do on a near-term basis. So I believe, to your point, Commissioner McLeod, it requires lots of communication and transparency on this, and from REMA as well. If this is the first target and it works well for you and you like it, and the costs are right for you to maintain it and provide it, and you want to do another one, where would that target be? And before we'd say yes to that, we'd walk back to Summit and say, here's where our next digital divide piece is, so that we could really, at least for 250 homes, give them the opportunity to do this, as long as there's no pushback from our partner, and as long as Fiber Light allows us to serve as an ISP. We need to have all that lined up to go forward, but then we could be unplugged and immediately have a piece of the digital divide corrected. That could be in place by January or February. Yes. From McLeod.
Thank you, Mayor. Oscar, is that something we can find out relatively quickly, that would FiberLight be open to this type of approach?
Yes, sir. I think we could reach out to them and try to start having those conversations. Again, we could look at our current contract and see what that looks like and make some assessments from there while we're still trying to get a hold of the right people over at FiberLight. And again, right now, as far as our FiberLight, so everything that resides on Surf Lakeland goes through our FiberLight connection. It doesn't go through our corporate network. We've got FiberLight kind of serves as our tertiary internet connection, so that it doesn't interfere with our enterprise operations. Right now, our current bandwidth there is 80 by 80, so 80 meg up, 80 meg down. So again, as we just second, third order effects, we'll need to be looking at that as well, because we definitely don't want that to interfere with any type of quality of service or anything like that. But yes, sir, we would get engaged as soon as we could to try to find out how we could proceed forward with that.
Commissioner Walker.
Hearing the conversation thus far and making sure I'm understanding too what in the movement as we kind of pace ourselves forward, and hearing, of course, what I heard Commissioner Madden shared about summits, what their discussions have been, along with City Manager Mr. Sherrouse. I guess I'm in a position where, as you just said, Commissioner McLeod, if we can move forward and have those kind of discussions among these particular vendors, REMA, Broadcasting, I guess it is, us, as well as Fiber, is it FiberNet? FiberLight, excuse me. I want to make sure I had the right name, and be able to move forward in some respect to see where we can come close to what we want to do to provide the service that's needed for this particular community. I'm willing to make sure we have those kind of discussions. If we think we can do that and make it happen, especially knowing, again, the summit is just not there right now. If I hear it correct, they're not there right now, even though we're talking with them about broadband and providing services to our community in that respect. As far as the digital divide subject matter is concerned, they're not there right now. So they're not there right now. We got someone who maybe can partner with us as it may be, and help support what needs to be done, bring everybody to the table and see how we can move forward. And in the long run, as I think Commissioner Madden has already indicated too, some of these things will shape up and come to play as summits, hopefully, movement comes about as well.
HB Holmes is on the line, and you've heard the discussion so far. So HB, if you can unmute, if there's anything you'd like to add, I know you're on a phone, we'd love to welcome that comment from you, who represents REMA.
Yes, thank you so much, and thankful for the team and their due diligence. One of the things I would like to say is that I know that even though the city of Lakeland in the past has used FiberLight and the consideration was given to Spectrum, there are other ISP providers that are in Polk County that when we do have our sit-down meeting, all of these things I think should be taken in consideration, that have the same capabilities that FiberLight has in regards to lighting up the fiber. But in this case, we're talking about a hybrid model. I have some, before the city manager and the Mr. Freed, Clark Freed, us putting something on top of Lakeland Electric. So there's a lot of opportunity here, but I think the next step should be us having a meeting with all the powers that be, bring them to the table and find an effective and efficient way to provide quality broadband services to the targeted areas that are at need. The capacity is there, the readiness is there, and in the midst of this COVID-19 environment, I think we need to move not in 2022, but I think we should try to do something in this year, closing out, going into the first quarter of next year.
And can you comment on your motivation on the REMA side and just the model?
Yeah. Well, we've produced a model here in Skyview. So I have an 80-foot tower here, and those that don't know it, I actually receive the internet through the air from Lakeland Electric rooftop, and I'm getting 30 up, 30 down, and if I want to push it to 80 up, 80 down, I have that capacity. Also, please note that we ourselves are, because of the broadband services that we'll be providing, will be in the spectrum as well. Because I own, and this is a part of my philanthropic endeavors, I don't have no axe to grind. This is my way of giving back to my community that I serve. I'm donating the tower. I'm not trying to monetize this tower. I will make my money other ways, but we need to provide these services. And what we do here is with this 80-foot tower, we spray the local community, and anyone in a 1.5 mile radius can get free Wi-Fi. We've been doing this for over 2 years. And we're looking at providing the first pilot project in Harmony, and then look at other areas. We look forward to even having the conversations with Summit and working with them, if possible, and even FiberLight. These are some of my colleagues that I work with on a day-to-day basis.
So I think it's important for us to hear that, because that means what we, in the spirit of the transparency that I hear Commissioner Walker and McLeod and saying, is we just want to make sure we're working well together with our anticipated Summit partner, and that we're also addressing as quickly as we can portions of that might be able to be peeled off to provide a service that bridges the digital divide, which we want to do. Let them be, and make sure everybody agrees. So that's it. That's my only way in. If we can get all that going in the short term, then I think it's very possible that we could start this in the beginning of the year.
Right, because Mayor, we could be into the second or third quarter still having this conversation, and there are people, students that need these services that are in that target area that are missing out. And one of the things I think we need to take in consideration, we have senior citizens now that cannot go to the doctor. They have to use telemedicine. And because of the fact, if they do not have broadband services, they're not able to communicate with their physicians. That's a very serious issue as we are all talking about lifting Lakeland.
Could you comment too on the classes for that? Because you and I chatted on this, just amplify that a little.
Yeah, and one of the things, I was there last night in the Lift Lakeland meeting, and one of my colleagues was there from Polk Vision, Kim Long. And Kim told me to tell you this. She's ready to go to work with us in this project. She has financial resources. This is a major need, not only for the city of Lakeland, but something that is needed Polk County wide. And a lot of people are sitting on the sidelines watching to see, as us being the leaders in Polk County, how do we do this? And working with private, public, and nonprofit organizations. And so we would filter the internet, we would provide that service. And I'll even say, if FiberLight, if the money is, if the city of Lakeland is paying for that service on a monthly basis to the Dream Center, continually to Parker Street, maybe there's some other ISPs that could come to the table and provide this hybrid model as this handoff to the community. And I think that that is a part of the conversation to the IT director that should be had.
Okay, so we'll tackle these one at a time. The telemedicine side, the comment too was that we need to teach seniors how to have access to the broadband, how they could access the doctor with telemedicine. And one of the things that a Harmony model provides is a place to bring people together to have classes to do some of those things too. So there's some, because of the missional component in this, I think it bears at least getting started as a pilot to the extent we get everyone in agreement and everybody says, yes, I can do my piece, and off we go. So additional comments from commissioners or questions?
Well, no, Mr. Oh, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Madden.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you everyone for giving their perspective. I also just want to say too that, when you think about Summit and their expansion of their network into Lakeland and doing a fiber to premises, kind of a network, so that you can do Internet of Things. You can have all of your devices and your sprinkler systems and your heating, everything, and have the capacity, right? But when we're talking about digital divide, we're talking about a lot of people who use their phones for everything. And their phones don't have a very big data plan, and they can't, watch school indefinitely on their data plan. And they can't, their data might shut off in the middle of a telehealth, conversation on their phone. A lot of those seniors that we're talking about a lot of phone usage that could have free Wi-Fi capacity in a general area to do schoolwork, to fill out an application, we're not talking it. So I hope my colleagues are thinking about, when you're wanting to provide critical essential services to underserved population and waiting on a large carrier like a Spectrum or a Summit, to come through, you heard Dr. Hum say that it's 30 up and 30 down. That's not what Summit is going to probably be providing its businesses and its residents at the fees that they're charging. Summit's coming in to up the game towards the Internet of Things, providing what even our local carriers have not provided. When we're talking about digital divide, we're talking about people can't do their homework tonight. They couldn't make the telehealth call today. And so, I have such a sense of urgency that any way possible that we can connect people to critical resources. I mean, to me, this is clean water we're talking about in 2020, to have the access to free Wi-Fi so that someone can get on their phone. And I don't know about you with your kids' plans. My kids actually have a plan in which, they have to tap into Wi-Fi to use their phone. So I see how patchy it can be. They can't even sometimes use their phones as their devices at school, depending on the Wi-Fi capability. So Dr. Holmes and Dr. Lake trying to come to the table, because they every day in their churches see community members and people who cannot do what we can do every single day on multiple devices in homes that are connected, wired, to, mostly cable coax right now, but potentially fiber, which would be unlimited. It's two separate things, in my opinion. Giving free Wi-Fi so people can use their devices. If they had to drive over to the neighboring street to be able to do a telehealth call in their car, that's what we're talking about. I just have to add that for context, that I know we want to be sensitive to Summit and FAIR and all this. I can't, to me, it's not even comparing apples with apples. Connecting people to the bare minimum requirement to critical infrastructure so that they can have their daily needs met is what Dr. Holmes and what Dr. Lakes are trying to provide their community. And I want to be as fair as possible, and I'm only one person, and I want to be fair to all the perspectives and get everyone, involved, a voice. But as for my one vote, I am in favor of starting as soon as possible to get people in that neighborhood and other neighborhoods connected to free Wi-Fi.
I fully concur.
Well, I think, Commissioner Madden, we're all saying this. I think we're going down the wrong this same channel here. We do want that to happen. And I have not heard anyone say they did not want it to happen. So I appreciate your comments. But sure, we all want it to happen. And I want to make sure we can get everybody to the table to make it happen as soon as we can. And I thought that's what we had said, even in some respect, when the mayor had asked prior to Dr. Holmes coming on the phone and sharing his comments as he did. And thank you again for those comments, Dr. Holmes. We want to make sure we can bring those people to the table to make this happen. And how soon can we get it done to make it happen? Let's go with it.
Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you. And I agree, Commissioner Madden, I agree, Commissioner Walker, to use Commissioner McCarley's word of alignment. She's not here right now, but she mentioned that last night. I do think that's an important piece of this, to make sure that these different initiatives are in alignment and all working together. And Commissioner Madden, you've got more insights into the summit, to their plans and what they were planning to do. Until this morning, I wasn't aware of that. So I think just making sure that fits what they're doing. I don't necessarily see them working against each other. It has to be one versus the other. But just to see this as a puzzle, we're trying to put all the pieces in the right place. And there are a number of moving parts to it, as I've heard from Oscar and others. So just getting our hands around it, and again, going back to making sure it's in alignment with an overall goal and strategy going in the right direction.
So I think, City Manager Strauss, that kind of gives you our feedback, and I believe it would be, even though it's 4 of us and that's a majority, it would be easy to assume it would be extended across the rest of the commissioners. So we'd like more information, and it'd be easier to make the decision, and a contract is probably necessary as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. That's the direction that we needed. I mean, had there been a decision that maybe this somehow conflicted with Summit, well, then that would have taken it a different direction. But, with what we've heard this morning, we will get all the players at the table and see what we can do to align with one another on this pilot project initially.
Fabulous. Anything else on this that anyone else wants to bring up and discuss? Mr. Torres, anything? Go ahead, Mr. Torres first.
No, sir. I was going to say I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, and Commissioner Mann.
And I did just want to say, to Mr. Torres, if you did want to reach out to Summit just to confirm, I don't know the nuances of how FiberLight lights set up. Is that something Summit, even if they don't have network infrastructure built yet, could they light up, and be the fiber light in this scenario to Dr. Holmes? I don't know that. That's your expertise, but certainly, that could, maybe a phone call you could make.
Well, and maybe after a no on FiberLight's part, because, if they're who we use, that may be our first rollout, but then, that does give you some other alternatives. We aren't going to do your work. You know how to get that done, but let's get everybody aligned. Thank you so much. The McLeod team keeps that in play. I like that. All right. Anything else from anyone else? Then we are adjourned. Have a afternoon, and thanks for your time, and thank you for your time last night as well.
Thank you so much, Mayor.